Heartless, Forbidden, Book 1. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Paulina Schubert. Chapter 14. I awoke in my amazingly clean and spacious white room. Its opulent elegance was a world away from my cramped apartment bedroom. This was an oasis of serenity with its snowy white placidity. The entire room had the appeal of fresh white linens. The glossy floor added the only bit of shine to the otherwise muted brightness of crisp white. The only other color was provided by the view of the green lawn through my window, and I imagined how it would look covered in snow in the winter. My pink dress provided the only splash of color within the room, but it would be back to undisturbed white once I removed the dress from view. I planned to keep this room as uncluttered as it currently was. The sheer size of it made it look like it contained minimal furniture, although it had more than any bedroom I'd ever had before. There was only a bed and dresser in my apartment bedroom, while here I also had a desk, nightstands, and that backless couch the designer had called a settee. My new bed was also a queen size, which was something the designer had talked me into getting. She had actually wanted me to get a king-size bed, so we had compromised. I couldn't fathom why I'd need a king-size bed just for one person, or even a queen size for that matter. The full-size bed I had in the apartment had already been an upgrade from the twin size I'd slept on at Grandma's house. I really didn't care about the size of the bed, but I had to admit that the thick mattress the designer had ordered was the most comfortable I'd ever slept on. It was what I would miss the most when I had to leave this lifestyle behind after high school. I stretched luxuriously and got out of bed. My eyes fell on the keychain I'd set on the nightstand, and I felt stirrings of excitement I'd been too overwhelmed to feel last night. I had a car! A beautiful, shiny new car. I had never owned a new car before because Mom could only afford to buy a used car. That was the kind of car I had seen in my future when I scraped together enough money to buy one. I hadn't ever imagined having one before I finished high school, and especially not a brand new one. I could just imagine the expressions on my coworkers' faces when I showed up to work in my sharp, black Mustang. As much as I hated to admit it, Kate had been right about me preferring one like his. Not that I would have rejected the gift of a red Mustang, but I had coveted his from the moment I saw it. And he had been able to read me. I frowned at that thought. I didn't want him to be able to read me so easily. I would have to work on concealing my emotions from him. He himself was so moody that I never knew how he would react to anything. One minute he was distant, and in the next he was propositioning me. Then he would get angry in that cold, cruel way of his. Yet sometimes he could be playful and warm. Glimpses into that side of him were rare, but that part of him existed. It was spontaneous rather than calculated like his false friendliness when he wanted something. It was good that he was a selfish jerk most of the time, because I would have fallen for him if that other side of him was the dominant part of his personality. I was already physically attracted to him, so he would have been irresistible to me if he was the whole package of looks and personality. Since he was now my stepbrother, that would have been a disaster. We couldn't exactly date like a normal couple. I shook those thoughts off because they didn't pertain to our situation. My situation, I corrected myself. There was no we here. Cade was completely separate from me. I couldn't start thinking that we were in this together. As he had reminded me yesterday, this was his house and I didn't belong here. I had to remember that, and remain aware of this being a temporary situation. This wasn't my home, and it never would be. After using the bathroom and washing my hands while still lost in contemplation of my new life, I almost walked out of my room in my pajamas. I shut the door and realized that I couldn't walk around here like that. I had lived only with women all my life, and I had been able to be comfortable at home without a bra. I could eat breakfast in my pajamas and walk out of the bathroom in a towel. Now that I was living with guys, I would have to be dressed whenever I left the privacy of my bedroom. I grabbed some clothes out of my closet and underwear out of my dresser. Setting those on the bed, I took off my pajama top and pulled my deodorant out of the drawer in my nightstand. I had one arm raised high while applying deodorant when Cade walked into my room and froze at the sight of me. I screeched as I dropped the deodorant and crossed my arms over my bare breasts. "Get out, asshole!" I yelled at him. He recovered from his shock and replied calmly to me, "Your door was unlocked." "Ever heard of knocking?" I retorted angrily. How would you like it if I just walked into your room anytime I felt like it?" He smirked in response. "You're welcome to walk in on me anytime you want. I'll make sure I'm always naked for you." "I'm not naked," I said in angry frustration. "And get out of here, you pervert." "Naked enough for a start," he replied. "I'll be thinking about—" His mother's gasp cut him off as she pushed open the door he had left ajar. "Cade!" she exclaimed in shock and reproval. "He won't leave," I complained to her. "I was in shock," he told her. "I stopped to see if she needed help finding her way down to breakfast, and I didn't know she wasn't dressed yet." "He didn't knock," I exclaimed with all the outrage I was feeling. "The door wasn't—" Catherine cut off his explanation with a stern look, and a tone that had no patience for his arguments. "What are you still doing in here? Leave!" He turned and finally left, forcefully yanking the door shut behind him. Catherine smiled awkwardly at me. "I'm sorry about that. He used to barge in here all the time when it was Courtney's room, but he's not a little boy anymore. I'll have a talk with him." "Courtney?" I questioned as she moved toward the door. Catherine turned back toward me. "Courtney was his older sister. She died when he was 8. Her eyes swept over the room and her lips formed a soft smile even as sadness was in her gaze. "I think she would have liked what you've done with this room." "This was her room?" I asked in dismay. "It was," Catherine confirmed. "I kept it exactly as it was after she died, and I shut myself away in here like I was waiting for her to come back. It was destroying me, but I couldn't see it. I was so far gone that I had a breakdown when Robert cleared all of her things out of here. He had forced me to leave the house with Cade for the day," she continued as I listened in fascination of this tragic story. "He threatened to have me committed to a mental institution if I couldn't spend one day away from this room. When I came back that evening, the room was stripped bare. All her stuffed animals, her bedding, her clothes, everything was gone. He told me that it was all stored away in the attic, but I couldn't deal with seeing her room empty of all her things." I didn't know what to say. It was awful, and I thought that Robert had gone overboard in trying to force her to move on from grieving her daughter. "It was right after the first anniversary of her death," she said, "and that changed my perspective. He let it go on for a year, and he saw that I was making no progress. Reaching my breaking point and going to the hospital turned out to be the best thing for me." She pulled herself out of her reverie. "You still need to get dressed, and I'm holding you up. I'm sorry again about Cade walking in on you. I'll talk to him, but you should probably lock your door when you need privacy, just to be on the safe side." I did just that after she left. Cade wasn't going to catch me unaware again, and it seemed like even his mom suspected that he might try. My anger at him had dissipated when I imagined him as a little boy, who had lost his sister and pretty much lost his mother too during a time when he needed her the most. I wasn't going to let that soften my heart toward him, though. I felt sympathy for the kid he had been, but it would not excuse his behavior now.